The warning signs are there, it's pretty clear. But if you don't know what to look for, you will miss it every time. Not sure if you can hear that noise in the background, but that's all part of it. What I'm about to share with you will have a huge impact on whether or not you buy that land or not buy that land. I promise you, it's gonna save you a whole lot of time, stress, and money. So grab a pen and a piece of paper. You're gonna wanna write this down. If you haven't already done so, subscribe to the channel. My name is Wayne Turner. For nearly 30 years, I've done everything when it comes to real estate. Buying, flipping, selling, building, you name it. We've done just about everything. So we share with you over on WayneTurnerTV.com. That's the channel. Everything you want to know, need to know, and should know when it comes to anything and everything real estate. Also, if you know someone that's in real estate or looking to buy a piece of land, about to buy a piece of land, be sure and share this video with them. I promise you, they will be more than grateful for the information that they will learn in this episode. So let's jump into it. Number one is avoiding landlocked property. You don't want to buy a piece of landlocked property without some sort of an easement or right-of-way. It seems pretty simple, but it's happened to thousands of people. You want to make sure that you have access to that land. When they call it landlocked, that means that you don't have any way of entering or getting on your property without trespassing or getting someone else's permission to cross upon their property to get to your property. And look, just a warning, you don't always want to go off the survey that the person selling you the property is giving you. You want to check and double check. You can do that by simply contacting a closing real estate attorney, title company, or most importantly, go to your county or parish Register of Deeds office. It's a recorded survey. So if that property has been surveyed, there's a recording of that you can actually go and get a copy. And at that point, you can look and see whether or not you can cross onto that property, you have an easement, you have a right-of-way, or is it landlocked? Now look, just because it's landlocked, that doesn't mean it's the end of the world, but you have to know this. You're gonna have to more than likely purchase some sort of an easement or right-of-way, typically 25 to 50 feet. And you have to buy that and pay for that at market value of a neighboring property and hope that they'll sell you a portion or a sliver, a slice, if you will, of their land so you can access your land. But before you do that, you need to check with the parish, the county, the city, and find out what is the minimum building restrictions for road frontage. For example, if you've got a 3 to 5 acre tract of land that's kind of landlocked back there, and you've got a neighbor that says, yeah, I'll give you 10 feet for a driveway. Well, if they'll give you 10 feet for the driveway, but the city or the county or the parish won't allow you to build a structure back there without at least 50 feet of road frontage, you're kind of hung out. So always check with the deeds office, find out whether or not you can be permitted to build a house with a minimum of 10 feet, 25 feet, 100 feet, whatever it may be. Every city, county, and parish is different. The second thing is buying a piece of property that you can't do what you want to do with it. You can't put a home on it, what you want to put on the property. And believe it or not, this is not just for like subdivisions. This is large acres and tracts of land. There's this thing called deed restrictions and covenants and homeowners associations and city coordinates. You got to make sure that whatever it is that you want to build on that property, you can build on that property before you take ownership, spend money, and take possession of that property. So believe it or not, there are homeowners associations that restrict you from even putting, for example, a circle driveway on your home, even though there's homes in the neighborhood with circle driveways. There's deed restrictions that will prevent you from building a certain size of a house. It may be too big or too small. There's restrictions there. You just want to find that stuff out. You want to know that stuff. It's public record, it's public information. You just want to make sure you get a copy of it and read over it thoroughly. And it's boring, tedious stuff. But if you don't want to do it, simply pay an attorney who has a paralegal and they will do it, and just tell them specifically what you're going to do with that property, and they will read through it, probably charge you $500 or $600, but they'll tell you really quick without you having to read all of that what you can and can't do on that property. And look, don't shoot the messenger. I didn't make this stuff up. I just think it's important for everybody in the world to know this information when it comes to buying a piece of land. They're not making any more of that stuff, so when you buy it, you got to know that you know that you know that it's going to be yours, and no one's going to send you a cease and desist letter. That's basically a nice word for saying you got to stop working immediately on your property. So let's jump into number 3. Could use a hat today. You always need to know what's going in around you, what's happening to the neighboring property, who owns the neighboring property. You can do that by going to your county and parish register of deeds office. They'll show you basically who owns the neighboring property. Because the last thing you want to do is buy a piece of property only to be close to a food processing plant. The last thing you want to do is to finalize a contract on a piece of property on a Saturday or Sunday and say, hey, I'm going to buy it cash as is, no questions asked, here's a $5,000 deposit, it's a nice piece of land. But you bought it on a Saturday or Sunday, but 300 yards that way is a food processing plant, and you have to smell food Monday through Friday, where they literally have a big manufacturing plant where they cook, box, freeze, and produce food. And look, these are just real stories. Another one is, what about that landfill? You had no idea. So you got to just find this stuff out. You can do so by going to Google Earth and looking at the map and looking down on the potential property that you're about to take ownership of. And most importantly, walk the land, but ask the neighbors. Just simply talk to the neighbors and ask the neighbors, hey, what do you like about the property? Would you purchase here again? What's important to you about this land in this area? Why do you think the people are selling the property that currently own the land? They'll answer those questions for you, and you can find out a whole lot of information before you take possession of that property and spend a whole lot of money. And listen, you do not want to buy a piece of property sight unseen. You want to lay hands and walk on that property. And when you walk that property, you need to have these things with you. It's really simple. Covered up with a lot of clothes, because there's things out there you don't want on your body. You don't want to have bites where you can't reach and get to. You also want to have a good deep bug spray. Bug spray is going to keep the bugs off of you. So you're covered up good, you got a good bug spray. You're also going to want to need some protection. Believe it or not, there's snakes, there's feral hogs, there's coyotes, there's bears, there's animals living in these woods. So don't go trekking off the woods with at least some sort of pepper spray or something for your own personal protection. Now, number 4 seems simple. However, it's much more complex than just actually knowing it. And what I'm talking about is flood zone. You need to know what flood zone the property is, how much land is in the flood zone, what specific zone that property is in, what is the elevation to that property. You see, they have A, B, C, and X flood zones, and variation of A. And A being that the highest risk of flooding will happen to that property. And as you go down to B and C and X, the risk gets lower. And look, that's another reason why I say you always want to get a copy of the survey, get a copy of a recent survey from the owner of the property that's selling you the land. And you also want to get your own survey if it's not a recent updated survey. That survey is going to tell you the flood elevation of the property. It will also tell you what flood zone that property is actually in. Then you'll know from there where you can and can't build your property, or should or shouldn't build your property. Now, don't get me wrong, you can build it right here on the water. It's absolutely beautiful. But oftentimes in these flood zones, you are going to be required to carry flood insurance if you get a mortgage. And that can be extremely expensive. You see, if you're in flood zone A, you have to build above the flood elevation stage to lower your insurance. If you build a slab house and it's at or below the flood elevation level, it could literally cost you thousands and thousands of dollars on a yearly basis just for flood insurance. Now, there are ways that you can prevent a lot of this crazy expensive, and don't be afraid to buy a piece of property that's in flood zone C or X. If you live on the Gulf Coast, and a little bit of information, if you will, is 25 states in the United States actually border the ocean. Think about that. So there's water everywhere. And even if you're in an internal state like Kentucky or Tennessee or Wyoming, there's rivers and creeks and streams. So it's always important to know what flood zone you are in. If you're in flood zone A, it's going to cost you more for flood insurance. And if you get a loan, it's going to be required. Me personally, I would not live anywhere if I'm in any sort of a flood zone without flood insurance. Now look, just because you're in flood zone C or X doesn't mean that that property has flooded or it will flood. It just means that you're in a higher risk of it actually flooding if it wasn't in a flood zone. And just because the land may flood, that doesn't mean the house will particularly flood. That's when you got to build the property up. Here's what I personally recommend. Whatever the elevation stage, they'll do what they call a flood elevation. And they'll tell you where the base flood elevation is. And the land may be below the base flood elevation, but you can build your house above the base flood elevation. Now, you're still going to be in flood zone A, but it's going to be substantially lower for your flood insurance if you get a mortgage or not get a mortgage. If you get a mortgage, you got a loan, you're going to have to require it. Lenders require it. If you pay cash for the property, you don't have to, but just keep in mind, you want to make sure that you at least have insurance, because your regular insurance on that property will not cover it. Regular homeowners insurance does not cover floods. So how you get around that is you build the house above the flood elevation. Have you ever been to Florida? Have you ever been to Alabama, on the Gulf Coast, anywhere, up Maine, anywhere? Houses are raised off the ground. You can drive a car under them, that sort of thing. The reason for that is those homes, the first floor of that property that's livable space is actually at or above the base flood elevation stage, and that keeps your homeowner's insurance low. It also keeps your flood insurance much lower. Next thing I want to talk to you about is trees, dirt, water, and minerals. And this is number 5, by the way. So when it comes to cutting down trees or bringing in dirt, you want to make sure that you can actually do that. I know it sounds crazy, it's your land, don't shoot the messenger. I'm just telling you what I've seen, and it costs people thousands of dollars over the years where they take out trees and get fined. And listen, it's not just the county, the city, or the parish. If it's a residential lot in a homeowners association, those HOAs, if you go to taking out trees, if it says in the restrictive bylaws and covenants of that HOA that you're not to cut down trees, they can literally send you a cease and desist. That's a nice way of saying stop working on your property, and they can fine you thousands of dollars because you cut down your trees. Now look, the same goes for dirt. When you bring in dirt, you have to know that you could be displacing water, lots of water. And when you displace water, it can be taking away water or adding water. But displacing water can get you a big, big fine. And you may be thinking, well, Wayne, I'm just going to bring in 50, 60 yards of dirt. I'm going to build in a little clay. I want to build it up. That way it's above the flood elevation. Listen, I'm just telling you, I've seen it happen time and time again where I get phone calls from people that have bought property and say, Wayne, I had no idea. And I try to tell them, listen, do your due diligence. I'm trying to help you here. You don't want to start doing all this stuff and then get phone calls and letters and got to get attorney involved in all that. You just need to know up front what you can and can't do with your property. Once again, I get it, it's your land, don't shoot the messenger, but there's laws and rules and it is what it is. Now, I also mentioned water and minerals. You want to make sure that you have the water rights to the property, that you can in fact dig a well, you can in fact have water on your property, and most importantly, no one else can encroach upon your property after you've taken ownership of it and start tapping in the land and digging for water. You want to make sure that once you close on that property, those water rights, everything is yours and yours only. The same goes for mineral rights. Mineral rights, and yes, crude oil is a mineral. So you want to make sure that it says in the contract that the mineral rights are to be transferred to you. You want to make sure that the current owner does not retain those mineral rights. The last thing you want to do is a year or two down the road, you get a letter that says we're going to start digging on the property on March 31st. And you're like, digging what? My property, my land? Yeah, because you bought the property and you didn't get the mineral rights. You let the seller keep their mineral rights. And all of a sudden they get a call from somebody that says, hey, could we drill on that land? I said, yeah, as a matter of fact, you sure can. Linda and Jerry, they own it, but hey, I still got the mineral rights. You don't want that to happen. Now look, just know I share all this with you so you're not freaked out or startled by it, but a good contract, and listen, almost every state has their own contract. They're anywhere from 8 to 11 pages, and you want to go off that contract. And the reason why is because most of those contracts are for the benefit of the buyer. They're very protective of you, the buyer, and they will state in there that the mineral rights are to be kept or transferred to you. Now for number 6, and this is caught many people off guard because you think it's just something that's really simple, right? You buy a piece of land, you want to connect it to the city water or city sewer. You need to find out, is city water, city sewer available? And if so, how far off the property are you going to build your property, your actual house on the property? If you don't have city water, you don't have city sewer, it's really simple. You can dig a well. You can put in a septic system. Unfortunately though, some land won't perk. There's a percolation test that has to be done. The county has to come out and do a percolation test, and that percolation test will tell them and tell you how fast water absorbs into that land. If it will not absorb fast enough, they will not permit you to put a septic system on the property. How you do this is pretty simple. You just go to your environmental office in your county or parish and tell them that you need a septic permit. They will come out to the property, they will do a perk test, and they will tell you whether or not you are permitted to put a septic system on the property. But there's more to it. There's more to it. So they're going to ask you, how many bedrooms does the home have that you're going to place on the property, whether you're going to do a single wide or double wide, whether or not you're going to be building a large stick-built house. They're going to ask you bedrooms. They're not going to ask you bathrooms. They do not go off of bathrooms. They go off of bedrooms. And if you're going to build just a 3-bedroom house, you want to tell them 4 or 5 bedrooms. And here's the reason why. If they come out and approve it for a 3-bedroom and it won't approve or it doesn't approve for a 4-bedroom, then you build a house with this extra room, then you go to sell it into the future, and that extra room could be a 4th bedroom, and a real estate broker says, yeah, that could be a 4th bedroom. That helps for resale. That helps your property value. That helps the speed in which your property sells. The faster you sell it, the more money you make, right? But if it's only permitted for a 3-bedroom home, not a 4, you're in a world of hurt, because then you're going to have to jump through a whole lot of hoops. You're talking about replacing septic systems and everything else to get a special system because you're only approved for a 3-bedroom. When in doubt, always tell them at the environmental office that you're going to put in a 4 or a 5-bedroom. You can't go wrong. And listen, be completely honest with them on this. 4 or 5 bedrooms, always. So look, I know all this information can seem a bit overwhelming, but listen, knowledge makes things easier in life. If you have to, rewatch this video, take more notes. I have other videos on land just like this. If you haven't already done so, subscribe to the channel, give us a thumbs up, leave us a comment. Your comments let other people see the comments so they can know, okay, this person did it this way, this person did it that way. It's more important for all of us to share because we all learn from one another. I'm Wayne Turner. I thank you for watching. God bless and have a wonderful day.